Welcome to Kicking Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation, the ultimate guide for parents navigating the challenging yet rewarding journey of raising teenagers. Join your host Christina as she dives deep into the world of adolescence, tackling everything from academic pressures and social dynamics to mental health and independence. So please, welcome the host of Kicking Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb, Christina Nation.
Good morning and welcome to Kick Your Teen's Troubles to the Curb. I am super excited today to have two special guests. Today we have Brenda Wollenberg and Alicia Mazari Andersen. So I would like to introduce them. Alicia has her PhD and is a scientist with expertise in biology and botany and 30 years of teaching experience. As a nutritionist and effective parenting coach, she blends science and compassion in individualized care. Brenda trained and worked as a social worker for over a decade, is a nutritionist and author of Metabolic Health Roadmap. She brings decades of experience helping children and families. Together, they deliver practical, science based strategies in their books, Epigenetic Roadmap to Parenting Children with ADHD, and online programs to transform wellness. Thank you. Welcome, Brenda and Alicia.
We are so glad to be here.
Thank you for
Yes, I'm
an honor to be here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited. We have lots of great stuff. I love how you guys have, used your experience to really serve those. So that's what we're going to get into today, serve families. Um, so I am really interested in your book and want to ask a few questions about first, how does an epigenetic, and it's funny because I was just having a conversation with my extended family yesterday about this and the research that they've done into their own genetics. So please explain a little bit about how the epigenetic roadmap allows parents to discover the foundational contributing factors of the child's ADHD symptoms.
Do you want to start with that, Alicia?
Sure. Okay, me as a biologist, I've studied genetics, and we always, attribute things like, oh, I have this or that or the other because of my genetics, right? Of course, we inherited our genes from both mom and dad. However, what we have found out is that epigenetics, when we change the environment, those genes can actually express in a healthier way. And in a way, we're not changing our genetics at all. We're just changing the environment. So the expression of those genes is what we're interested in. And it's this change of environment that, to me, is what it's causing a lot of havoc, especially in our kids, teenagers being a very vulnerable part of our world, because the world has changed. The world has way more toxins than when we were kids. The world has more, more electronics, more social pressure, more of this stigmatized way of looking at things like ADHD. And so when we change the environment, we're able to get these genes expressed in a healthier way, put it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what epigenetics.
Yeah, and
Yes,
epigenetics
I love.
actually. Sorry.
No, you
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, often people say, well, what does epigenetics even mean? Like, where did the word come from? And it is, Greek or Latin. Epi is above genetics. So it's not something that's going to take the place of it. Obviously, we all need our genetics or we wouldn't be here. But it is something above that we have an ability to impact. So as Alicia said, it can influence the way those genes express themselves. So most of the time, parents find it quite encouraging. They're like, oh, should we get epigenetics? Should we get our children's genetics down, or should we do our own genetics? And what if I find out some challenging things? And we're like, potentially, but you also are really empowered because then you know what are the tools you can use to maybe alter the way that gene is going to express itself. So we find it encouraging. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Very encouraging. I know for myself, when I was young, I said to myself that I wasn't going to have kids because my mom was, lived with bipolar, and I knew
Mm,
it was genetic. And I was worried that, my children would then suffer from bipolar but then I got older and I did decide that, you know what, I am going to learn as much as possible
yeah.
about, how to support someone with mental health and my own mental health. Like I have struggled myself as well. Um and it is interesting how even though you may have the genes, that the environment is a big part of how it's going to be expressed. Are
Mhm.
you going to then have this mental health issue, or are you is it not going to express itself in that
Mm,
way? And environment and the families that we're raised in, and the social climate and the culture, and
mhm.
all of it plays a part,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's interesting that you said that, Christina. I too wasn't going to have children, and partly because my family of origin, even though our parents loved us as best they could, there was a lot of mental health issues in my family growing up. And it was kind of like, I think partly that's why I ended up going to social work. I think there's a lot of social workers who go into social work to try to deal with their own
I'm in
history,
social
you
work.
know. Okay, yes, there we go. And what was interesting too was even before epigenetics, because the human genome's only been mapped in the last 20 years. So when I was going to school, when Alicia was taking, biology and botany, it wasn't like they were talking about the human genome, but even learning tools, mental health tools, you know, even if you did come up, I had postpartum depression, but I had a whole different set of tools that I could use than say my mom had, for example. And I think that's what we try to encourage families with as well, is that it's a new day. There's a lot of things that can be done for different situations.
Yes, yes, I agree, and I'm so happy that we have you here today to discuss this. It's so important. So thank you. So
Mhm.
let's dig a little deeper into it and kind of understand what are some of the contributing factors. So you guys speak a lot of your book is on specifically ADHD, right? So what is some of the contributing factors to ADHD symptoms that guide in changing the environment to decrease challenging symptoms and improve focus?
Alicia, why don't you cover our core steps? Like just kind of talk about the different areas that we look at.
Before we move into the core steps, let me just explain something. Usually, when there is a kid with ADHD or any mental illness or whatever, right? Usually there's no testing done. There's
Mhm.
usually, trial and error. Let's try this medication or try the other medication. And to me, that is like a one way looking at things, because a lot of medications, basically, what they deal with neurotransmitters, especially dopamine and
Mhm.
dopamine pathways, like how much dopamine are you producing? Are you breaking it up? Is it getting the signal to the next cell or not? We don't know. So, a lot of, for example, ADHD medications deal with the transport of dopamine. Now, that is looking at one gene, basically. And when we look into ADHD, we call this a polygenic. It's not a disease, it's just the way it's a manifestation, it's a clinical manifestation. And so when you look into it, you don't just look at one thing, do you? I mean, do you look, like it's like, I lost a pen. Where am I going to look for it? Oh, it's in the garage. Did you ever think to go to the garage and look for it? No. You know where to look for. You're going to be looking all around your house to find the pen. Well, it's the same thing in genetics. We don't look at one thing. We don't just look at dopamine. This is where we did, when we talked about the book, we designed 7 core steps, because these steps is not, don't just look at one thing. Don't just look at neurotransmitters. Look at what's happening with the rest of the environment. And that's when we decided, okay, let's look into what could be some steps people can take, to find the root cause. So of course, these 7 core steps are basically the foundation of the book. And of course, the first core step is eat.
Why? You got nutritionists.
Nutritionists, right?
Yeah.
And this is something you do every single day. You do it all the time. So here we go. Food is extremely important. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then we talk about movement. Moving your body, not just moving your fingers, with your cell phone or video games. We need to be able to move our bodies. So, and we know, like kids with ADHD, for example, they need to be moving their bodies all the time. They're telling us they need to be moving their bodies. So, I mean, then we think about, okay, what else is there? Sleep is huge. There's usually a link between, not being hyperactive and not being able to sleep. Mm-hmm. But this is funny because sometimes, I hear moms is like, no, but I have a great sleep routine and still doesn't work. And then I tell them, and what's your morning routine like? Oh, I don't have one. I said, whatever you do in the morning will affect how your kid will sleep. So those 3 are like fundamental, right?
Yeah. Right.
But then we look into something else. And that to me is very important, and it's detoxification. How your body gets rid of toxins is extremely important, because we all get rid of toxins differently. So how do you, what happens, what happens when your body is full of toxins and they cannot get out? Well, guess what? We're going to store them. And most of them they're not water soluble. They're soluble in fat. So they'll be stored in fat. When you think about a very important place in the body, where we have fat, is the brain. And so there's toxicity. There's a lot of toxicity stored, right? So this is where we're getting into, our 4 pillars. I'll let Brenda talk about the other 3, but, eat, move, sleep, detox are 4. I'll let Brenda do the other.
So we also talk about calming, we talk about inflammation, and we talk about repair. So one of the big things with everything, especially in today's world, like Alicia mentioned, just the increased stress levels that our teenagers are experiencing, and not just our teenagers, the teenagers' parents are experiencing, then we want to make sure that we're looking at how we can help our children calm. And I think that we're grateful that there are so many more tools, but we also have a better understanding in, again, dopamine responses in different ways, short-term and long-term stress responses. For example, there's a fascinating gene. Well, we love all of our genes, okay, but there's a fascinating one called an FKBP5 that actually its role is to help with the negative feedback loop with your HPA axis, so hypothalamus, pituitary gland, and adrenals. And it's a great gene. It helps regulate your cortisol during the day and make sure you've got high amounts in the morning, so your child is, alert and ready to go to school, hopefully, and ready to focus. But over the course of the day, that should drop gradually, so that by the time it's evening, the lights are dimming in the house, excuse me, people are getting ready for bed, it should be at a low level. But if this gene is variant, and I'll just go back one step, your genes are coded then as either normal, and there's no moral grounds for that. It just means the one that's most common. That's not our term. That's a scientist term, or variant, if that would be generally less common, and generally the one that there may be some challenges with. Okay, so if you were variant in this particular gene, your body doesn't get the message to turn down the cortisol production and to reduce that for the day. So someone that is red, like me, who got variant from my mom and variant from my dad, Alicia and I use like a traffic light, kind of a simple system. If you got normal from each of your folks, then you would be a green, and that's typically, not always, but typically more beneficial. If you got one variant from one parent and normal from the other parent, we would say that'd be like a yellow traffic light. There would be some caution here. We could maybe do some things with our child around that could be helpful. Or like red in this case, this is like, oh my goodness, like your body does not tell your that HPA axis to stop producing cortisol, which is why, as an adult or your child is not downregulating and ready for sleep, is still extremely stimulated when it's at bad time or hours afterwards. And even knowing that one single gene can be super helpful in giving your child a different set of tools, perhaps a supplement that will help regulate that. Otherwise, we're disciplining a child or pulling our own hair out. I have a child with ADHD diagnosed as a young adult, and I think back to her teen years, and we reference Rachel often in the book. She gave us full permission, read the manuscript, signed off on it, but there were times that I can remember going into, our bedroom, my husband's bedroom, and just going like, just shoot me. I can't figure this out. Now I would have just said, hey, let's do some self-regulation exercises here. Let's take this supplement that has like lactium in it, so it's going to help reset that. And we would have had a different child and teen experience. So that's really what we want to do, is give calming tools, and then restore the inflammation. Huge impact on ADHD. If you're looking at the way messages are being transmitted across a synapse, like anywhere you've got inflammation is going to negatively impact that. So can we help a child with that through calming baths, so avoiding foods that are pro-inflammatory, to again doing different types of activity that are going to help reduce that, dry brushing, help with the toxicity and inflammation. So there's different tools in the book that no matter where your child is genetically, you will be able to determine some things that could be helpful. Even if you don't have your child's DNA tested, you should be able to get some nuggets out of there that will be helpful. So does that give a little bit of a picture?
Yes, I have
Yeah.
so many questions. First of all, let's start off with just now, as I said, I was having this conversation with my extended family just the other day. We had a family reunion, and they were talking about how they've done their DNA testing and what they've learned from it, and it's something I've heard a little bit about and have wanted to do, but just am so busy right now, so I haven't. But are you telling me that these tests nowadays, like you can literally, wow, like you can go through and learn about each gene and
Yeah,
Go
let
ahead,
me
go ahead, Alicia. Yeah.
a little bit about what's out there in the market for gene testing.
yeah,
I've known people like, no, I already did my DNA. Oh, great. And I said, how many genes did they check? Oh, they checked 150 genes. I'm like, good. And what did you learn about that? No, they only told me, to eat more vegetables or something. It was really funny. I thought it was really funny. When I looked at the genes, I looked, okay, what most people are looking for is end genes. Genes that will tell you, for example, oh, you have the gene for Alzheimer's, or you have the gene for breast cancer, to just put an example. I think I'll just put the BRCA gene as an example because it's a well-known gene. It's like, well, it so happens that either if you have the BRCA gene, you may have breast cancer. If you have the BRCA gene, you may not have breast cancer. Even if you don't have the BRCA gene, you may have breast cancer. Do you see the problem here? It's like that's an end gene. Imagine that an end gene It's a gene that when it's turned on, it's like a forest fire. Everything is on fire. Okay. What we have based our work on is the 20 plus years of clinical test work with Dr. Penny Kendall Reid, a naturopathic doctor in Ontario. And what we found out is instead of working with those end genes that are turning on the fire, why don't we turn off the fire here, down here? So we call these trigger genes. So when we look at trigger genes, then we are able to find out what we are able to find out, for example, your dopamine. Are you producing enough? Are you breaking it down? Are you transporting it? For example, I'm the type of person that does not break down dopamine. You want some? I have plenty. Okay, I can give it away, like no problem. But that comes with, I need to pay for that, in a way, because I don't break down adrenaline and noradrenaline. So my stress level is really high. So these are the type of things, like for example, how do you detox? Are you a fast metabolizer? Are you a slow metabolizer? What happens when this is occurring in your body? How do you sleep? How are your sleep genes? My sleep genes are red and yellow. It's like, okay, like pay attention to that. So in other words, what we do is we work with these trigger genes, again, based on 20 plus years of clinical experience from Dr. Penny Kendall Reid. We use her platform to be able to analyze them, because one thing is like, well, here are your genes, and then like, yeah, and then what do I do with them? Well, this is where we come in, and this is where we show you what to do with your genetics. And our idea is not just go do the testing, but put it into practice, into everyday practice. Because otherwise, like, yeah, people have sent me reports. A mom said, oh, I already tested my kid for ADHD. I'm like, great. Which genes? Oh, the MTHFR gene. I'm like, great. Any other genes? No, just MTHFR. They told me my kid needs folate. And I'm like, okay, but that's just like one piece of the puzzle. How are we going to put our puzzle together if we don't understand us at the genetic level? So for Brenda and I, we've been, that's why we have programs, because the idea is that you're in charge of your health. But when you understand what to do with it, that's a different story.
Yeah.
So to your question, Christina, the type of DNA data can be gotten through regular 23andMe, for example, if they don't end up going under it. I know they filed for bankruptcy, but we're looking for, many of our clients come with their data from 23andMe. They just didn't realize they had all this data there. It's their raw DNA data. They can download it from there. I had a client send me yesterday and said, I don't think this is right. This is just like a note file with all these numbers on it. And I said, yes, that's actually what we want. Okay. So with that raw data, even though, the typical layperson is not going to understand anything about that, the program that Alicia mentioned, the software program that we use, then analyzes, interprets that into a practical application. So something like 23andMe can give you, again, those end stage things. That's both where we got ours from. That was really 7 or 8 years ago when we started this journey. That was the most common place to be able to get that. There are other ones now as well it's often ones that we recognize for children, or we recommend for children, because if someone as a parent decides they would like to get DNA tested for their child, it's very hard for a child to give informed consent. They have no idea what that means. That would mean, 20 years down the road, whatever. So there's actually a Canadian company that we recommend instead, that they once they run your data, they destroy it. They don't sell it to pharmaceutical companies. They don't keep it. So that would be far more, I would say, courtesy-wise for a child. If later they decided they didn't want this, they could destroy their own single copy and it wouldn't be out there in the world. So there are ways to work even with children to get it that we feel better about, more honoring and secure for them, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but I see how, knowledge is power, right? How you can be
Absolutely.
empowered with this knowledge that you can help. And I seen that, in my own experience. Like I said, I was worried that my children would struggle. And one my daughter did. She struggled with depression, and that's actually the book that I wrote is about how I supported her. But because, like what you're explaining, I had the tools, because I had studied professionally, got my education in psychology, all of the things in parenting, and use all of those tools to help support her.
Yeah.
And she's doing amazing now. So like you're saying, you have this knowledge, and then you can learn how to put certain things into practice to help support what could possibly you know could or could not. And we'll go through the steps of that you're talking about in your book about this, because I know food right off. I've seen it, and we're going to go over in just a minute. I'm so excited, but we have to take a quick break. So
Sure.
we are thank you for being here with Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, and we will return right after the sponsor break. Thank you.
Mike Zoric, a three-time California state champion in Greco-Roman wrestling at 114 pounds. Mike, blind since birth, was born in Hartford, Connecticut. He was a six-time national placer, including 2 seconds, 2/3, and 2/4. He also won the Veterans Folk-Style Wrestling twice at 152 pounds. In all these tournaments, he was the only blind competitor. Nancy Zoric, a creative spirit whose talents have taken her to the stage and into galleries and exhibitions in several states. Her father, a commercial artist who shared his instruments with his daughter and helped her fine-tune her natural abilities, influenced her decision to follow in his footsteps. Ms. Zoric has enjoyed a fruitful career doing what she loves. Listen Saturday mornings at 12 Eastern for the Nancy and Mike Show for heartwarming stories and interesting talk on the BBM Global Network.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of The Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on The Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
Welcome back to Take Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. I have with me guests Brenda Wollenberg and Alicia Mazari Andersen, and we have been talking about their book, The Epigenetic Roadmap to Parenting Children with ADHD, and talking about how we can use the knowledge of our genes to help support us with different challenges such as ADHD or others. And so you guys said that in your book you talk about the core steps, which were eat, move, sleep, detox, calm, inflammation, and repair. And I would love to go through each of these steps. Hopefully we have time to get through them all, but love to get through them a little more. Like the first one you're talking about, eat. And would you agree that, because a lot of times we have parents ask the question like, why is there so much more ADHD nowadays? Why is there so
Mhm.
much autism, mental health crises? Why are we seeing more and more of this in our children nowadays? And correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like a little earlier you're talking about that it's what's in our environment nowadays that has changed and is kind of turning some of these genes on, right? So like the
Mhm.
toxins and right away when you talk about eat, what the toxins that are in our food nowadays that
Mhm.
weren't before, right? And I
Yeah.
know myself, I spent 10 years as a behavior specialist in the school district. And
Mhm.
I also worked in the behavioral classrooms. And so a lot of our kiddos in the classrooms, struggled with ADHD and some autism and other challenges. And we were we were rewarding them with junk
Yeah.
food, sugar. And I was like, is this doesn't make sense. I mean, they're struggling with these different behavioral challenges and we're feeding them all of this junk food, all of this sugar, and that can't be good. So please talk a little bit about how what we eat plays a
Mhm.
role.
Sure. I'm going to just touch quickly on a couple things you said, Christina. One is just to understand how Alicia and I come at ADHD, autism, for example, and it really is through a lens of honoring neurodiversity. Like we really recognize and believe that the different ways that brains function are like a gift. Like it's not
Mhm.
about, as Alicia mentioned earlier, it's not that we think ADHD is a disease, for example. We really see it as a way of seeing the world. What I think that where the challenge comes in, and this was a phrase that I first came across in reading a book called Gene, An Intimate History, and I'm going to look at the author's name so I get the spelling right here or the pronunciation right. It's by Siddhartha Mukherjee, one of the most fascinating books I've ever read on genetics. And he talks in there about a genetic mismatch, and it is a term that Alicia and I have adopted in our books and our teaching. It's simply that the way a child who has ADHD thinking patterns is a mismatch for a lot of the current environments, like in our school system, for example, where they may do much better exploring in a more of an open setting where instead of structured classes, it is more layered learning, for example, able to pursue something that they
Mhm.
are really focused on at a given point. So partly the reason there's been an increase in ADHD diagnosis is because of the way we've structured our educational system in the last 20, 30 years. And so it's going to show a higher percentage of children with that because they don't necessarily function super well in that environment. So yes, part of
Mhm.
it's increased diagnosis, part of it's situational mismatch, and then yes, a large part as well is compounded by uh, both the toxins in our environmental and in our food. Alicia gives whole lectures on Roundup and whatever, okay? But it's also because of the lack of nutrition in the food. So we're getting a lot of refined grains and sugars, and neither of us are anti completely sugar. We both love dark chocolate. Don't get me wrong. We're not saying
Mhm.
there should be sometimes foods or celebratory foods or any of that kind of thing, but a steady diet where there are less nutritional amino acids, for example, like the proteins, which are the actual things that make, that tyrosine helps make. You need that raw component to make dopamine. So if your child doesn't eat much protein and is subsisting on a lot of refined grains and sugars, they literally are going to have trouble having the raw materials to have a brain function optimally. So in the book, we go through some really simple steps they can use to determine if their child it's not only just are they getting enough protein, some children have much higher protein needs, like twice as high as somebody else with the different set of genetics. So, you could say, well, my other kid did fine on an egg and whatever. Well, this child might need two eggs and, two pieces of chicken, and their snack may need to be clean cut of pepperoni sticks, to be able to get enough. Other children do really poorly with their carb response genes. Some kids are fine having regular amounts of the starchier carbs in the day, the bread, the muffin, the rice, the potato, for example. Other children, it just throws havoc with their blood sugar regulation and their insulin responses. So knowing that means you can tailor your dietary approach to your child and to help them better handle the day. Anything else to throw in there, Alicia?
Yeah, absolutely. We also need to understand that what happened with the food industry is that, they decided, not long ago that fats were the ones responsible for cardiovascular disease and all their other things. And so they removed fats, but then things don't taste that great with fats. So they added sugar. So sugar is hidden everywhere, everywhere. Like you really need to understand how to read labels, and if possible, don't even read them. Go to the vegetables and take a look at how much of, as you said, not only sugar but starches. Because starch turns into sugar right away. Like it's like, and it's to me it's so obvious. I have a daughter who's a teacher, and when she started teaching, once I was in her classroom, and I said, this kid is going to have a tantrum in half an hour, and he's going to fight with this other, and she looked at me. I'm like, how do you know? I'm like, because they had a lot of sugar before coming to school, like sugar highs, really up, really hyper. You're up here, but then they drop. And the minute they're down here, this is where the tantrums come in, when all of this explosion comes in. I need more energy. I don't have energy. And then I told my daughter, I said, just take a look at what they can bring in their lunches. Starches, lots of color, but artificial color. Like there's no real food. Like we're not used anymore to basically go out there, pick up the carrot, put it inside your mouth, because we don't grow our own food. And so the problem is how packaged food is really, as Brenda says, lacks nutrients. They're not getting enough protein. They're not getting the right amount of fat. We need to reduce their amount of carbohydrates, and we promote real food. Real food is something you can take from the tree, put it inside your mouth, not an apple that comes in a container that's packed with sugar. So food is the first step that we encourage parents, if you're listening, that we encourage parents to take a look at. Send your kid to school with good protein, vegetables, and some good fat in their tummies. They will do a lot better in school than jumping up and down. There's a 12-year-old that lives here in Seattle, and she was just really hyperactive. We basically changed the breakfast, and she goes, oh, my morning went well. I'm like, good. And they said, oh, but then they gave me pasta at lunchtime. Okay, how did your afternoon go? Well, not as good as the morning. I'm like, do you see? Like, just experience something like simple as that. What are you sending kids with to school? What is there in their lunch bags? Or if they get lunch at school, what is in there, right? And so it's really rather simple to us to understand, but it's the implementation. Put it into practice. It's what really is important.
Right,
And we also understand that when we're asking for implementation, often it's when parents are at their wits end already, because it's very challenging. The school is maybe on their case about things. Maybe the soccer coach has said, we don't want you to bring him to practice right now because he's too volatile. So we actually get that we're saying to parents, and also, can you change their diet at the same time? So that's why we do things very step by step. Start this, do this, get this one thing in place, see how it goes. Give lots of easy steps. So it's not like overwhelming.
Right, right. And I like what you said that each child could be different, right? And that's important too. Like my youngest son had a lot of like just food intolerances.
Yeah.
Um, and like for example, one time I thought he was eating so healthy because he would just eat raw carrot, raw apple, and peanut butter, some protein. Um, but then come to find out that he had an intolerance to the oh gosh, what is the sugar in apples?
The fructose?
Yes,
Fructose?
fructose. It was so just
They don't do
you know
well on.
so yeah, so it's so
Mhm.
important to realize that each child can be different, have different needs, and to meet with a nutritionist. Like I was telling my daughter who just gave birth to my granddaughter that it's so important to meet with a nutritionist because we do learn more and more with each child. I know over the years it's what we know is always changing, and so it's important to meet with that nutritionist and learn what is, really best. All right, we do need to take one more
Absolutely.
sponsor break.
Okay.
So again, thank you for tuning in to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb. We're streaming with Bold Brave TV, and we'll be right back after this sponsor break.
Dr. RC will share extraordinary resources and services that promote educational success, as well as making a difference in the lives of all social workers, as well as the lives of children, adolescents, and teens of today. She will have open discussions addressing many of the issues that we face about our youth and how being employed in the uniquely skilled profession of social work for over 18 years has taught invaluable lessons through her personal experiences. She will also provide real-life facts, examples, and personal stories that will confirm that why serving as a child advocate is extremely beneficial when addressing the needs of the whole child. Listen live to Dare to Soar, Saturdays 10 a.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network, and tune in radio as Dr. RC will provide thought-provoking information that will empower, encourage, and strengthen students, families, and communities across our nation. You can also visit her at soarwithkatie.com. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Hello, and welcome back to Kick Your Teens Troubles to the Curb, streaming on Bold Brave TV. I'm your host, Christina Nation, and with me today is Alicia, Mazari, Andersen, and Brenda Wollenberg. So we've been having a great conversation on how important nutrition is in our daily lives. We've been talking about their core steps in their book, Eat, Move, Sleep, Detox, Calm, Inflammation, and Repair. And unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get through all of these steps. So you're definitely going to have to purchase their book. But let's talk about detox, because as you were saying earlier, um, we have a lot more toxins in our environment nowadays.
Mhm.
And you were saying that some of our genes are better at detoxifying than others. And so,
Mhm.
kind of, if you could touch a little bit on what we can do and to detox and how that could be helpful for us and our children.
Want to go, Alicia?
Sure. Okay, so our liver is a very important organ. Every time something we put something in our mouth, before it gets into the bloodstream, it will go from the small intestine through the liver and then out to the bloodstream. Imagine that it's like a sieve. It's going to sieve everything, everything. So the liver is it's an amazing organ, has so many functions, but among them, one of them is detox. Like a lot of the food that we eat, we're talking about the quality of the food, but we also need to think about the amount of pesticides that are in the food that are coming, right into our mouth. Anything that we drink, water, lots of things in water that we need to, sieve them. Anything that we breathe, like through whatever, our air, our air quality as well. So imagine that our sieves are clogged and that everything that we are ingesting gets really stuck in there. And so our liver gets congested and we're not able to metabolize toxins the way we're supposed to. So I mentioned toxins that are soluble in fats. So that will end up in the brain, basically, because especially for people that are very slim, usually that's the place where we get most of the fat. If you have a little bit of a belly, a belly fat, probably they'll be stored there, but at some point they'll have to come out. And so the way we support it, number one, is avoid toxins. How? Well, you really need to check what you put in your mouth, what you're putting on your skin, what you're breathing, what type of water, the type of water, are you filtering your water? Is it what quality water you are drinking? Like, first of all, stop or reduce, because stopping it will be absolutely impossible. Reduce the amount of toxins you're exposed to. So start there, number one. And then support the liver, right? And we have in our book, there's something that we highly, highly recommend. And I'll let Brenda talk about it because it's one of our favorite topics. And in short, we call them COPS. So go, Brenda, go with that.
What are you saying? Cobs?
COPS.
Oh, castor oil packs. I didn't understand what you said. Yes, we're huge fans of castor oil packs. Okay. So dry brushing is a simple thing you can do with your children. But castor oil packs, we give instructions on how to make them, or you can buy them online. And they're simply put them over the liver gallbladder area. Maybe you're sitting having a family night watching a movie or something. And what it does is castor oil has the ability to speed the flow of lymph. So that means that clear fluid that surrounds your cells is working more efficiently to take nutrients to cells and to remove waste materials from them. So that can be a simple thing to do. Either the dry brushing or the castor oil packs can be a helpful way to detox. And then, as Alicia said, stopping it at the source. So checking your food, washing your produce carefully. What kind of skincare products are you using on your children, or is your teen using? What kind of personal cleaning products are you using in your household? All of those are things that if you can catch them at the root cause there, you can start minimizing the amount that's coming into your household and into your child and you.
Right. Yeah. So many key things to look for. We have a few minutes left, so I'm going to let you guys choose which core stuff you would like to touch on.
Oh, we're going to talk calm. Okay, you can't have a social worker on here and not talk calm, Christina. So with an understanding then of the way that neurotransmitters work, we explain the different ways that dopamine is working with cortisol, all of these different things are working in the body. We then give some really simple tools and just one simple thing. A lot of times with kids and adults, what we find is that they've not completed a stress cycle. This is material we came across in a recent book put out called Burnout that was written by two sisters. Amazing book, really understand the whole concept of this. But think about animals. Often children can really get this. A horse bucking, a dog shaking water off it when it comes out of the water. And what happens is animals often innately know how to complete a stress cycle. If your child has been agitated about something at school or at home and they are unable to complete that cycle, that cortisol is just vibrating. And so do something like running around the backyard, turn on some music and have a dance party. Uh, every child will be different. Some children really like a tight hug, other ones like run away. That's not helpful. But figure out what ways your child can accumulate tools to complete stress cycles, and you're going to find that they're going to be able to pull that out. Maybe a deep breathing pattern. We love physiological sighs, something that is their tool that others in the family can remind them of, and other can also practice, so that it's not just that child, but everybody uses this tool because it's a helpful thing. So that would be my suggestion for the calming, is get some stress cycle completion tools.
And at the genetic level, just to finish this up, at the genetic level, when you understand your genetics, you will understand, for example, why some medications might be or might not be for your child. And so we explained that there's a special chapter in the book that talks about medications, that talk about how do they work and why do they work for some, but not for others. Because sadly, we're in a system in which medications are given as trial and error. And, there's different amounts, different medications, change them, put them here, put them there, like understanding yourself at this level is what makes so much sense to parents. Like, now I know why this medication did not work with my child, or why this was too much for him, or that you don't need medications at all. I have ADHD, but if you give me a medication, you don't want to be around me. Put it that simple, in simple words, right?
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Can you please tell the audience how they can find your book, find your work, your programs?
Sure. So book is on Amazon. As I have a copy right here. There you look at it. It's a little DNA strand on the bottom, parenting children with ADHD. So that's available around the world on Amazon. Our website is inbalancelm.com. And on there, people can find a little bit more about some simple free tools they can have that could, or also our online programs, where we do have a do-it-yourself program for epigenetics, that people get a lovely book to actually walk through everything with their kid. So yes, that's available.
Yeah, the book itself is inside a kid's book that I'm showing here.
This adult book has a kid's book with it.
Kids book as well, because the kids need to be part of the process.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, I think I'm going to be reaching out to learn more myself.
Sure. Sounds good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for being here. And as well, if you have a teen who's struggling, or you're worried about their mental health, then check out my book, The Power of Everyday Grace, Parenting Teens with Depression, also available on Amazon. And come back and tune in next week for another show, and we will see you then. Thank you.
Thanks you so much, Christina.
Being here.
Thank you.
This has been Kicking Your Teens' Troubles to the Curb with host Christina Nation. Tune in each week as Christina features expert interviews, real-life stories, and practical strategies that empower parents to connect with their teens and effectively address their struggles. Here, Tuesdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, on the Bold Brave TV network, powered by B2 Studios.